ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to the first ever BelieveLand Media, all things Cavalier podcast. Brandon Lewis and Joey Schneider will be breaking down all things Cavaliers every week. I am your host, Brandon Lewis, here with my co-host, Joey Schneider.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Man, Brandon, I am excited. First podcast, BelieveLand Media. Let's get this started. Yeah, so we have talked about this before, and the lineup, I think it's going to be a little crazy tonight. I'm going to say it's going to be a little wonky. I think we're going to start out with Garland at the 1. That's a given. I think beyond that, you're going to go to Sexton at 2. That's obviously another given. Here is where my prediction goes off the rails a little bit. I think we are going to see Lauri Markkanen start at the wing. And as we've talked before, this team does not have a wing. Outside of maybe Osman, who has proven that he cannot be a franchise wing. He is not, in my opinion, a starting caliber wing. I think we are going to see Markkanen at the wing today, at the 3. And then we're going to see Mobley at the power forward slot, and we're going to see Allen at 5. So pretty much what we expected, I think is going to be there. But I think where we go off the rails is we're going to see Markkanen, a 7-footer who has played power forward most of his career, at the 3.
I think the question I have for you then is, what do you do with Kevin Love? I mean, you're paying him all of this money, to really, if you think about it, come off the bench. I've also seen some rumors out there have been floating around. Chris Fedor from Cleveland.com has reported the potential of Colin Sexton even coming off the bench and being a 6-man tonight. And maybe you put a Coro in the 2 slot, which I don't know how you feel about that. I've always liked Sexton. I think he could be a great 6-man to let him run the show as the 2 guard. I don't know if him and Garwin playing together is a natural fit. I mean, I think it's definitely been a 2-year chemistry experiment, but the question is going to be is how do they view Sexton?
Yeah, I thought about that. I thought about putting a Coro in at the 2 spot, but I think as of right now, the way that this team is constructed, I think that a Coro comes off the bench tonight because Sexton is still, as of right now, until Mobley proves himself or Markkanen goes off and he starts having a year like he did a few years ago with the Chicago Bulls, he is going to be your primary scorer. Now, Garland's going to be Garland. He has improved year over year the last 2 years, and he has the potential to become a massive star. Sexton, on the other hand, as we've talked about, and it's been reported pretty much everywhere, all over the media, he could not get a deal done with the Cavs. Him and the Cavs are just far apart on, I don't know if it's money or years or whatever different, whether it's language in the contract, we don't know what it is, but they're off. So he has a lot to prove this year. This is a contract year for him. He's got to play into it. So I kind of expect him to be that scoring guard that we need. We need people to put up points. We got a lot of guys that can hit threes now. We got 7-footers all over the place that can shoot. And getting back to your point on Kevin Love, they have said that Kevin Love is going to have a role to play. I think he's going to come off the bench. I think they're going to try and keep him between 20 to 28 minutes a game. They want to keep him somewhat healthy. Now, whether that's to benefit the team game to game, or if that's going to be a trade piece maybe later on in February, remains to be seen. So we'll see, but I think he's got a role to play in this roster, the way that it's constructed, and we'll see come February what exactly that role is.
I think it could be interesting, if Kevin Love, accepts coming off the bench because he's been a starter his whole career. Now we've seen him come off the bench. I believe it was one time. It might have been in the 2016 finals against Golden State. I believe he had a concussion one of those years, one of those games. I don't remember if it was 2016 or 2017. I do remember him coming off the bench one of those games. But, for Kevin, I know he's looking to, potentially go to a winning team. He's had a lot of injuries, as we know. He's missed so many games under that lucrative deal that he signed. I think the big thing is, are the Cavs going to be willing to look at the investment that right now they're paying Kevin Love and say, he's one of, if not the highest paid player on the team, and he's not starting in our starting lineup? Is that something that you think the Cavs could swallow?
I don't know if the Cavs have a choice. I think that if they, I think that at this point they really just need to find where they can fit him in the rotation. Obviously he's getting up there in age. He's not a 25 and 15 guy anymore like he was earlier in his career. He's not playing the way he played when he had LeBron and Kyrie on the team. He is, getting up there, and he needs to start accepting whatever role is given to him by the Cavs. And I that's not a slight on Kevin. I think that's just something that comes with age. We all can't be LeBron at 19 years and still putting up triple doubles. He's got to accept the fact that he still has years left, but they might not be as a starter. You might be, he could be maybe a guy who might be a candidate for, sixth man of the year. And, I'm not saying he's going to be, or he's even close to being in the running, but I think that's a better position for him right now, considering that he's making, $30+ million a year, at least for the next 2 years.
Just quickly go over the bench unit. Do you feel like that, Ricky Rubio, Jetty Osman, are we going to be able to produce enough points out of that second unit to stay in games when our starters do go to the bench?
Well, me and you have talked about Rubio a little bit at extent, and I really like the Rubio signing. And I don't mean to steal what you say, but you've said this, and it's was it a sneaky good signing? It was an absolutely sneaky good sign. It was a trade. It was actually a trade on NBA draft night. But Rubio is a type of guy who I think can benefit both Garland and Sexton. And him running the second unit, I think, is going to really help us in games where maybe it's starting to get away from us a little bit. Maybe we have a 15, 16-point lead. It starts getting away, and Rubio's going to be able to come in and he's going to be able to stop it. I think you put Rubio, and if my starting lineup is correct, which is Garland at 1 and Sexton at 2, then Okoro, I think, is someone who's going to really benefit from having Rubio on the floor with him. Same thing goes for someone like Dylan Windler. I think that he could be potentially, a huge piece of this team if he can stay healthy. I think that's the key there, is if he can stay healthy. But I think that, again, talking to Love, if Love's part of that second unit, at that point, your second unit's looking pretty good. Ricky Rubio, Isaac Okoro, you can have Dean Wade in there, Kevin Love. Your second unit's looking pretty good, and, a team that can not only build a lead, but also maintain that lead with their second unit.
Expectations of the team. And this, I would say, is a little bit of a tricky topic in terms of, realistic expectations. And then, what we want to see out of the Cavs this year. Because I think the question is going to be, could the Cavs certainly make the play-in tournament? I think they probably could. Maybe they do. Or do you think it's in their best benefit to not make the play-in tournament, to not make the postseason? Because as we've seen with teams such as, Indiana, maybe I'll throw a Charlotte in there, Washington a few years, some of these teams that have made the playoffs kind of here and there, maybe every other year, but they're just not getting better. And that's where I feel like the Cavs are kind of at right now, where they may be just stuck in the middle of nowhere.
So I'm taking a dramatic pause here for effect. I I think the expectations definitely need to be tempered. I think if you're a Cavs fan, you're going to go to a Cavs game because you're a Cleveland fan. It doesn't matter who wears the name on the back of the jersey; it's what's on the front. I don't want to, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Evan Mobley's going to put him over the top, or Darius Garland's going to become a superstar this year. Because as much as we can believe that, and I do truly believe that, I'm going to temper my expectations. I'm not going to sit here and say, Ricky Rubio's going to, because we've had that before. We've had Derrick Rose, we've had Dwayne Wade so we've had these guys who've come in and we're like, oh, they're going to become their old
Yep.
selves, and so I think realistically, you're looking at a team who could potentially be 500, which would be a drastic
Which would
improvement
be
over last
a
year.
crazy improvement. I mean, 500 for this team, and I'm sure a lot of people know this, but in case you don't, since Dan Gilbert has owned the team, if LeBron James is not on the Cleveland Cavaliers roster, the Cavs have never even sniffed the postseason. So saying 500, which by the way should easily get you into at least the play-in tournament in the Eastern Conference, would be a huge overachievement. I just think, and I'm not to be a Debbie Downer here at all, but I think Mobley is the big piece. And I think Mobley is a guy that could potentially break out. But if he doesn't break out this year, I'm not saying he's going to have a rookie slump, but if he doesn't, put up all numbers to be a potential rookie of the year candidate, then I don't know how this Cavs team is, any better from last year, besides maybe a Lauri Markkanen, which again, who knows if he's going to be even on the team by the time the trade deadline hits. I think January and February, we will know the direction of the Cavs, whether it's looking up or whether they potentially sell.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. And we can talk about this, starting lineup, the predictions, all that stuff. And I love talking about it. We'll talk about it more every single week. But when we start getting into the dog days, and especially when you start talking about the trade deadline, where we are going to be at that particular time is going to determine a lot of things. Will Rubio still be on the team, or are they going to use him as a trade piece? Marketing's deal is I think is very fair, both to him and to the team. So if he does put up big numbers, but we are still a very below average team, could he be a big trade piece? Maybe there's a team out there, maybe Kevin Love will start drawing interest, because at that point he'll only have a year and a half left on his contract. So there's a lot more answers later on in the year. But for right now, like you said, for me predicting a 500 team, it's based off of, is Garland going to take that huge step that he's supposed to take? Sexton's been working like crazy in this offseason. Is he going to take the next step to actually become more than just a scorer? Because scoring 25 points a night on the worst team in the league is not,
it means nothing.
It means nothing. It's nothing. So is he going to become a guy who, who I want Colin Sexton to be this year?
Who?
And I would absolutely give him his extension. I want Colin Sexton to be a better scoring version of Marcus Smart.
Okay.
Because that's to me who he kind of reminds me of. He's gritty and he's tough, but he's a better scorer than Marcus Smart. If he can defend like Marcus Smart this year, then I can see Colin Sexton getting his extension, and I could see that leading to more wins as well.
I could too. I think the worry for me is Sexton and Garwin. They are two very small guards. So when you go up against a bigger team, and again, the Cavs are trying to make up for it, I think, with a bigger front court. But also, when you take into account with that bigger front court, again, if you put Markkanen at the 3, or you put Mobley at the 4, or whatever combination you want to do, if you're playing a guard-centric team, or if you're playing, a very wing-centric team, your defense on the perimeter has to be spectacular, because if not, they're just going to drive right by you and get right to the rim.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, with the Garland and Sexton combo / experiment, if you want to call it that, they wanted to try and recreate, at least in my eyes, they wanted to try and recreate what they had up in Portland with Lillard and McCollum.
Totally agree with that.
You cannot do that, because Dame Lillard is he's a stone cold killer. He is one of the top I would put Dame Lillard as one of the top 5 to 7 players in the league. So you're not going to be able to recreate that. And even at at the size they're at, Dame Lillard's 6'3". CJ McCollum is like 6'4", maybe 6'5" on a good day. Whereas Garland and Sexton are both 6'1". They're the same height. They're very short by NBA standards for guards. Sexton can definitely slash. Garland can shoot. He can slash. He can pass. He's really stepped it up. But you're not going to be able to recreate something that was recreated somewhere else just because you draft guys who are, I guess, you want to call it quote unquote similar. I think the thing that's going to hurt the Cavs the most throughout this entire season is not having a true wing. That is, to me, what is going to hurt them the most. Because you could put Markkanen out there on the 3, but is Markkanen going to guard LeBron? No, he's not. Is Mobley going to guard LeBron? I would like to think that he's going to be a better defender than Markkanen might be on LeBron, but he's not going to.
Not this year, at least. Not until he grows his man body.
Absolutely.
Well, we've talked a lot about Garland, and Zach Lowe of ESPN has named Darius Garwin one of his top 5 interesting players of this year to watch. Now, the question is, what does interesting mean? When you think of that word interesting, is it interesting because, he could be a breakout player? Is it interesting because, he may just shoot a lot and score a lot on a bad basketball team? I mean, if Garland is interesting to watch, is that going to make people want to turn the channel to the Cavs? I guess my interpretation of it is just, what does really interesting mean? What are expectations for interesting?
I think interesting is more or less because if he does not make that leap this year like he is supposed to, or like people are expecting him to, and execs from around the league, scouts, they are all expecting Garland to take that huge leap this year. And if he doesn't, then where do the Cavs go from there? And I think that is probably why it's intriguing, because there's a lot of, you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket with kind of praying Garland's going to become, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. He's going to become kind of like a Kyrie when Kyrie started breaking out, during his second season or so, and, to Garland maybe one more year. But it's intriguing because if Garland becomes an all-star, then, and Mobley plays to his potential, now you got the start of something special going on. But if he doesn't, and he plays like he either, like he did last year, which was still good, but not good enough, or maybe even his rookie year, maybe he regresses, then the Cavs are in such big trouble. I don't even know where we go from here. So I think maybe that is why he's intriguing.
I'll go further. I feel like the Cavs blueprint is a little bit modeled after the Atlanta Hawks with Trae Young, and a little bit after what Golden State did early on with Steph Curry, because we saw Steph Curry blossom very quickly right before our eyes into a great shooter. We've obviously seen what Trae Young could do in only his second or third season, carrying the Atlanta Hawks basically to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, I'm not saying Darius Garwin's going to be that. What I'm saying is Darius Garwin has the shooting ability of a Trae Young, of a Steph Curry, and I think that that's what the Cavs saw in Garwin.
And I agree with you on that. The problem that we run into is, look at how the Hawks are constructed, and look at who they spent their money on. They drafted John Collins, who is an animal. They signed Danilo Gallinari. They either signed or traded for him. They signed Bogdanovich. They got shooters. They got wings all over the place. They got power forwards. They got centers. They got Trae Young, who's a superstar. They got Kevin Huerter at the 2, who we know who can shoot. We know he can defend. That team is not just built around Trae Young. It's a lot of really good players on that team. And whether I'm not going to say that they're not all stars or not all stars, but they are really, there's a couple all stars.
Really good contributors. And then Trae Young is able to elevate that play, break out players. And I might be cheating a little bit. You could say this because he's only a rookie, but I truly believe, I said this earlier, if the Cavs are going to be a legitimate contender in the East, not this year, but for years to come, I think this is the year Evan Mobley needs to come into this league and be a presence. Because if he is not a presence, this is basically the Cavs from last year with the addition of Lauri Markkanen. And that's just not going to be enough to be a good basketball team. And in my opinion, I loved Mobley coming out of the draft. I think he could play, I'd rather see him at the 4 personally than the 3, but I think he could also play the 3, maybe in a very small lineup. You could also put him at the 5. I love his ability to block shots. I love his athleticism. Now, his shooting will definitely need to develop a little bit more, but at least he's got a little bit of a shot right now. And I think just his presence on the floor, his playmaking, and just his defensive ability, again, he can switch with the 3 or the 4, which a lot of NBA teams do now. They like a lot of that versatility. I think Mobley fits the mold, and GM Kobe Altman said that if the Cavs had the number 1 pick, they still would have drafted Evan Mobley. That's how much Altman loved Mobley, and I think he's going to be a huge part of this team this year.
Well, the one thing I will agree with you on is that you absolutely cheated. I think Mobley is going to do well this year. I think that you will see him absolutely improve throughout the season because he has to. There is no you cannot be average as a number 3 pick. There were 3 guys that were going 1, 2, 3 this year. It didn't matter who was drafting, and it was Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, and Evan Mobley. It was going to be those 3 in whatever order it was going to be, and it just it happened. The Cavs got Mobley, so that's a great pick. I think that if the Cavs are going to be a 500 team, he needs to be either the defensive rookie of the year, or he's got to be right there with it, 1 or 2. But my breakout player is actually something a little different. So there's a lot of ifs that come with my breakout player, but my breakout player is actually Dylan Windler.
Interesting. I'm very interested.
So you look at a lot of these teams that are making the playoffs, the Nets, the Hawks, you can pretty much name almost any playoff team. They have that one guy who doesn't have to do anything but stand on the 3-point line and knock down that 3.
Completely agree.
He can be that guy for us. He has the ability. His shooting ability is absolutely insane. I would definitely say he is the best 3-point shooter on the best pure 3-point shooter on the Cavs.
I completely agree with that.
So if he can stay healthy, you can slot him. And I think that, with all this talk that we've had about the rosters, the one thing that we haven't mentioned is these rosters are very fluid. So it might, it could be a starting lineup one night and the next night's going to be completely different.
Great.
But the one constant is you need someone who you can count on to knock down those shots. And with, Darius Garwin's going to take that step, being able to see the floor better court vision, and spot, Windler in the corner, at the top, and he gets the ball to him, and he can knock down those 3s game after game after game. He is going to be a huge piece of why the Cavs can, pull out games that maybe are either should have lost or might have been a little bit closer than they should have.
I could argue Windler should be in the starting lineup. I could argue that because of his fit with Garwin. You put him at potentially the 2 or the 3. Like you said, Garwin is such a dangerous 3-point shooter. And then when he drives, you not only have to worry about Garwin, but you can't double team Garwin, or you can't double team, one of these post players, whether it be Jared Allen or somebody like a Mobley, because Lauri Markkanen could potentially be on the wing. Evan Love could be on the wing. Dylan Windler could be on the wing. And all of those guys are mostly in their career now. 3-point shooters. And we talked about, the question of, are the Cavs going to be able to score enough points? Well, they do have a lot of big men, but what do most of those big men all do? Shoot the basketball. It's today's NBA. And so I think the Cavs last season realized they needed to create more spacing. And I do like that Windler pick, because you're right. Almost every single NBA playoff team, what do they got? They got a guy that in crunch time, like if you have a Kevin Durant, if you have a LeBron James, when they're going to the rim, what are they going to do? They're going to pass it out to a wide open sharpshooter. That sharpshooter's job is to make that shot. And that's oftentimes, by the way, the difference between winning and losing in the NBA.
Yeah, and just two examples, and they're kind of the reasons that I picked Windler: Joe Harris and Kevin Huerter. Guys who you can rely on that when they're open, they are nailing that three. So I think that in that same vein, and you're talking about, those are playoff teams. We have a guy like that, and he could be a breakout player. Now, I'm not saying he's going to average 20, 25 points a game, but if he's knocking down, 4 or 5 important threes a game,
that's 12, 15 extra points that are going to be, by the way, a difference in the game. And again, it's something the Cavs didn't do enough of last year. For the 1 through 8 seed. Now, if you ask me, the NBA season, the regular season at least, is one of the most boring regular seasons in all sports. I think last year's NBA season was a little bit of an anomaly due to the fact that there were so many injuries in the postseason. I don't want to spoil anything, but I do believe, barring injury, at least in my head, I think that we do pretty much know at least the Eastern and Western Conference Finals matchup, if not the NBA Finals matchup. But I'm going to let you start here, Joey. And let's start with the Eastern Conference. Who do you have as your 1 through 8 seed?
So I knew we were going to be doing this, and this was actually fairly tough, because once I get past my 1 and 2, it is very, very fluid through pretty much. I mean, you could almost put 11 or 12 teams. You could almost have an argument for every team with the exception of maybe 1 or 2. But my number 1 team is the Milwaukee Bucks. The champs, they're going to get back there. Giannis is a year older, a year wiser. He's still super young, crazy athletic. They got a great team. And, I think that they have a really, really good chance to repeat. My number 2 team is the Brooklyn Nets, as much as I dislike them for pretty much most of their players. I'm just not a Nets fan, me personally, but there's no denying Kevin Durant is one of the top 3 best players in the league. If Harden plays like James Harden from 2 years ago, that is just a incredibly dangerous team, even with Kyrie Irving not playing because of all the craziness that's going on over there. My number 3 team is actually, and my 3 through 5 are very interchangeable, but my number 3 is the Boston Celtics. I just love the combination of Tatum and Jaylen Brown. That's just an absolutely dangerous combination. They're both hungry, passionate, and they got some good players around them, some good rotation pieces. I like Marcus Smart, and I think that's a team that can definitely make some noise in the East. My number 4 team is going to be the 76ers, and that's solely based on Joel Embiid being as dominant as he possibly can, because we know all the problems the 76ers are facing right now with Ben Simmons. But I still think that they got young players that are getting better. And on top of that, I'm a huge fan of Tobias Harris. I think that he is one of the most underrated players in the league. And I think that team is still very much in talks for the championship. So I got them at 4. Number 5 is the Atlanta Hawks. I don't want to say last year was a fluke, because it wasn't. That's a very, very good team. But to put them at the top again, above everything else, and they didn't really make any changes. For me, I got to put them to keep them a little lower. But again, the East is a lot tougher now than it has been, than it was the last, decade, 20 years almost. The East is very, very tough this year. So I got the Bucks, the Nets, the Celtics, Sixers, the Hawks. Now I got the Miami Heat. I think if Tyler Hero bounces back from a less than stellar second season last year and comes with with a third-year outing where he's plays at an all-star level with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, it's a very dangerous team. I like them a lot. And then I'm going to go here. I'm going to go with, for number 7, I'm going to go with the Indiana Pacers. I love Malcolm Brogdon. I love LeVert. I love Sabonis. And a guy a lot of people don't talk about when a lot of people were hurt, TJ Warren.
Balled out last year.
Really stepped up and tried to keep that team together. But now everyone's healthy, I think. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if LeVert's still out for a little bit longer. But that is still a very, very – I'm not going to say that they are an absolute shoo-in to the playoffs, but they are a dangerous team every night.
I agree too. And you have to remember though too, that 7, 8, 9, and 10, they're going to be all mixed in and playing, the play-in games tournaments that don't even count towards stats. But just to remind our listeners here is that we are basically predicting that these 7 and 8 seeds would, in theory, I guess, defeat the number 9 and 10 seed in the play-in tournament, and this would be our bracket.
Exactly. Well, I'm just kind of going. I'm going from I'm going to go to my 10, and I think anything can happen between 7, 8, 9,
7, 8,
10.
9, 10, yeah.
So at 8, I got the Chicago Bulls. Really like the Bulls, what they did this offseason. Lonzo Ball, Zach Levine. Zach Levine, who's been on the team. They went out and they got DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan's not the same player that he was, 3-4 years ago, but I think that he definitely still has some good time left in him. Maybe two really good seasons, and I think Nikola Vucevic is probably one of the most underrated centers in the league. The guy's a bona fide all-star, and that's who I have at 8. So then quickly, my number 9, going hometown guy, the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think somehow they find a way to get into that number 9 spot for the play-in. I think that they have the ability. I think that they're going to do it. As much as we sit here, we talk and say, okay, this lineup, that lineup, I think they're going to find a way. I think this is year that they do find a way. And my number 10 team is the New York Knicks. Okay, I think for some reason they take a step back, but they still find a way to get into that 10 spot and play in.
So me and you have a very similar top 5. I'm going to go a little bit quickly here just because we are running out of time a little bit. So my number 1 and number 2 are flipped. I am putting Brooklyn over Milwaukee. Now, I do not think that last year's Milwaukee Bucks championship was a fluke. They beat Brooklyn straight out in 7 games. I totally understand that. But I will also make the argument that in Game 7, Kevin Durant had his toe behind the line. On the line. If it was behind the line, Brooklyn would have moved on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Milwaukee would have went home. I think these two teams are so similar. By the way, for the record, even if Kyrie Irving does not play at all this season, I think Kevin Durant and a healthy James Harden would just defeat Milwaukee. I think it'd be a very close series, but right now I would put Brooklyn over Milwaukee. 3 through 5, again, very interchangeable. I'm going to put Philly just above Boston because I feel like Philly is always a better regular season team. We've seen the Celtics in the regular season struggle a little bit. As much as I love Jason Tatum and as much as I love Jaylen Brown myself, I just don't know if for the regular season, if they're going to be better than Philadelphia. Number 5, I agree with you, Atlanta. I don't know if they necessarily take a step back, but I just think they stay right where they were. Obviously, a huge upset over Philadelphia last year, but let's not, kick the tires and say they're a top 4 seed in the East. There's just at least 4 teams better than them. And then at the 6, I am going to put the Knicks. While I do think they take a little bit of a step back, I don't know what they necessarily take as big as a step back as you're predicting. And then number 7, I have Miami. Jimmy Butler, I feel like is just a great player. He gets the most out of his guys. I think Miami's well coached. I even may flip that and put them above the Knicks when we get, later into the season. Number 8, I will take Indiana. I echo all of your sentiments on the Pacers. I don't know if you mentioned Miles Turner as well. To me, he's always been one of the most underrated centers in the league. And then number 9, I agree with the Bulls. Adding Lonzo Ball, adding DeMar DeRozan. I will say too, Nikola Vucevic has been an all-star center in Orlando. I think he has a good year for the Bulls. And then at number 10, sadly for Cavs fans, I just don't think this is the year. I'm gonna be the pessimistic one on this podcast. You gotta show me, right? I gotta see it to believe it is the way I am. I just think for some reason, I think the Cavs could get in, but I think they finish more to that 12-13 range. I really do. I think this is going to be another, growing year. I think they'll be better than what they have been in the past. But again, the question is how much better. So at number 10, I'm going to put Charlotte. I think Charlotte had a very good offseason. I think when LaMelo Ball gets better, they were a little bit of a surprise team last year. They made the play-in tournament, and I think that, LaMelo Ball comes out. I think they barely sneak into a little bit of a better East. I think Gordon Hayward also has a good year, and I'll put Charlotte at 10.
Here comes Colin Sexton. Sexton chased by Hill. Off to Stevens. Oh, my!